Hello, I'm Josh Baer, and welcome to the Baer Facts podcast. This week, we sat down with Barbara Castelli, who's been at the helm of the Castelli Gallery here in New York for 25 years now. As steward of not only one of the most prestigious artist rosters of all time, she's also carrying on the legacy of her late husband, Leo Castelli, whose close relationships with groundbreaking artists like Andy Warhol and Jasper Johns, I'm pretty sure you've heard of them, completely changed the course of contemporary art history in the 20th century. It's now continuing into the 21st century with Barbara. She's an art historian and collector herself, as well as a longtime friend of the Baer Facts. So we spoke about the importance of this legacy and how Barbara's vision, alongside the trust her artists give her and her collectors, has carried and shaped it into the present day. Today we're joined by, a legend. Barbara Castelli is here in the loft. Welcome. Does this remind you of the New York you used to see?
Yes. First of all, I'm not the legend. I'm the wife of the legend. So I would say, and indeed, I met Leo in 1993, and he was a legend. Even if I didn't realize it in those days, I realized it later on when I started to be with him, and I realized how people were treating him or speaking about him. And I don't think I would have been able to go and talk to him in the way I did if I had thought of him as a legend.
Well, one of the great things about the gallery, going there on West Broadway, particularly on a Saturday, but any day you went there, he was not sitting hidden away in an office. He was sitting there at a desk where everybody could walk through and anybody could talk to him.
Yes, that is actually one of the things that I think made him so special. So I'm going to tell you two things to that regard. The first is I'm Italian and I lived in Japan before coming to New York. And so I came to New York speaking very little English. I was speaking Japanese and Italian, but not English. And we always thought of Leo Castelli as an Italian guy in Italy, even if he was not really an Italian guy, but we had this misconcept about him. And everybody was talking about him like he's Italian, but he doesn't show Italian artist. What's wrong with him? So there was this.
Romanian, was it? Hungarian?
He was born in Trieste. That was Italy when I was born, but was part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. So he had a really huge Austrian component. His father was Hungarian. And so anyway, I basically felt that it was very easy for me to arrive and go to somebody talking Italian. I couldn't think less about the guy is famous or not famous. I went to the gallery, he was there, and I said, oh, that's easy, I can talk Italian to somebody. But then the other thing about him is also, as you were saying, I have this memory. One day I was at the gallery and I wanted to go somewhere with him. And he basically said to me, no, we have to stay at the gallery because this is Saturday afternoon and a lot of kids are coming and they need to be available for the people to talk to me. And these were basically just random people working at the gallery to look at the show, not the fancy client, nothing of that kind. But he had this idea that he had to be there that it was his job to basically be there for the people. And it's a very different way of thinking of the job of somebody who has a gallery. Sometimes you hear people today talking about being an art dealer. And I don't think Leo ever thought of himself he thought of himself as building the career for the artist, not having a career for himself in a certain way. And yes, I think the place reminds me a lot of the big change that happened when the gallery moved to Chelsea. Basically, at that point, everybody started to hire an architect to design the gallery, with the result that the gallery ended up almost being all the same. And here in Soho, they were just spaces that were cleaned in a way. They were not designed by the architect to... So that very complex relation that we all discuss about should the building help the art looking better? Should the building be more important than the art? I don't know what to say. I think in those days, none of these existed.
The best space in Soho was probably Paul Cooper's. The floor was funky, the lighting was whatever, and it was there for the art.
I think so. Paula, I think, was the first person to come to Soho. One episode that I don't know if it is very known. Well, Leo was on 77th Street in his townhouse. At some point, I think they needed more space because the artist had started doing bigger work and there was need for more space. But he didn't come to Soho immediately. There was a shipping company, an art shipping company, not just a shipping company, but packing and shipping. And they were based in Harlem on 108th Street West. And at the beginning, Leo rented a space in that warehouse, the famous Castelli warehouse. And I think there could have been also a possibility that the gallery would have ended up out there in Harlem, not in Soho. And as I understood the story, speaking with Leo, but also, I don't remember the name of the people, they ended up being on the ground floor.
The ground floor of 420 West Broadway was a shipping company.
Yes.
Before it became Mary Boone Gallery.
That's right. And so they were basically in this place on 108. And then at some point, Leo told them, just go to Soho and found the place. And they eventually found 420. And the shipping company moved on the ground floor together with Leo. But I believe, as I said, at the beginning, it felt almost like if the space on 108 were available, they might have been there, and maybe things would have been very different. But
well, it sort of shows that things sort of happen by chance as much as by design.
Yes, I think actually a lot of things happen by chance. And the other thing, which I believe is also interesting, because there is so much talk today about, the big gallery and all the spaces and this and the other. Basically, things were just kind of happening in a little entropic way, like, oh yes, I like this space, Soho is okay. You know what I'm saying? There was not really this plan of like, if we don't open a gallery there, we don't have a presence here. I don't know, there was a lot of things were happening very casually. And I believe that the dealer were just maybe looking at the space, calling 3 artists to look at that. Do you like it? Yes, okay, let's do it. Very, very casual in a certain way. Maybe less money involved as well.
I was there then. So I think there got to be a critical mass of the best dealers, whether it was Holly Solomon,
Sure.
Metro Pictures, Nino Nozai, Mary, Leo, Ileana. It really became clear that on Saturday, if you walk down there, you'd go to 10 or 20 galleries, and you would know pretty much all you needed to know about contemporary art on a Saturday afternoon.
Yes, I also think that most of those galleries that you mentioned were really primary market galleries. And the secondary market galleries were on 57th Street, kind of.
Well, Larry Gagosian was down there in a loft on West Broadway early on, too.
But wasn't he showing also a lot with Nina,
Yes.
Basquiat, things of this kind? But I think there was, I don't know, I think there was more of a distinction between the gallery that were working with artists showing new work, and they were in Soho. And then there were more galleries that were doing more secondary market, and they were more on 57th Street.
Well, let's come at this a different way or a new way. I mean, one of the traditional ways that people go to open a gallery is they start as a collector. And then there's another way that's a little less common is they run a gallery for 25 years like you, and you're an art historian. So if you could talk about those two and how they compare and contrast a little bit.
Okay, so I think I became an art dealer on default, and I think I don't even know as of today. I mean, a lot of things I do as a dealer don't make any sense, basically, because I don't really think it was ever an active decision. What happens to me is basically that I came to America because my field of study was Japanese avant-garde. I had spent 3 years in Japan studying. Well, first I did my dissertation in college about the Monoha group in 1986, so when people didn't even know what Monoha was. And then in Japan, I was studying the Gutai group, and the Gutai had a lot of relation with Alan Kaprov, John Cage, Rauschenberg John, so I came here to study those kind of relations. And I intended to keep doing my job, but when I met Leo, he just didn't want to cross the gallery. He loved what he was doing. And little by little, I ended up being dragged into all of that. And for a long time, I was just next to Leo, but really not being an art dealer. And it was really me asking him a lot of questions all the time. And the questions were like, let's say there were 2 paintings by Jasper Johns. And I would say, why do you like this, but you don't like the other? It was really a lot of asking questions.
Would you disagree with him sometimes and say, no, you're wrong, this one's better?
No, because my attitude was always the attitude of somebody who had to learn.
But now looking back, do you sometimes say, yeah, maybe not that one, but this one?
We have completely different opinion, very likely, because Leo liked order and I like disorder. So we are very different. But I remember at some point, for example, there were these people who wanted to buy a painting, and there was a little problem at the gallery because it was a new painting by one of the star artists. And these people went to the studio, saw the painting by pure accidents, because Leo had not seen it yet, and nobody knew the painting was even finished. And these people went to Leo and they said, we want to buy it, and this is what we offer. And then Leo speak with the artist, and the artist wants 3 times as much. And I remember on that time that I started to say, but Leo, can you negotiate? What happens? And Leo would say, no, when the gap is so big, you just don't negotiate. And so I would ask this question to Leo all the time. I remember one thing that might be relevant to the market today, as a matter of fact. So there was another of these crises because somebody didn't want to pay. And Leo was always trying to get the money for the artist somehow. And I remember at some point I said, but what if they give the painting to a museum? And Leo said, that all important paintings sooner or later end up in museums anyway. So museum, like everyone else, has to be online, a museum. They can't just go ahead because they pay little. I say, because at the point it all collapses, then why doesn't the artist give the painting to the museum directly? And he was saying, they just have to go online like everyone else. And remember that all great paintings sooner or later end up in museum, no matter what. So it's a different way of thinking.
Keep listening to hear part 2 of our conversation with Barbara Castelli, where she talks lessons learned from 25 years at Castelli Gallery, how she navigates the idiosyncratic nature of conceptual art, and what makes a work truly important when it hits the market. This and more coming up.
So now it's been 25 years of what we're calling Castelli Gallery. It's 65 years of the entire operation. That's a quarter century, Barbara. Does that number stick in your head now?
Well, I don't know, yes and no. But what I think, as I said, it all happened on default. And then what happened was that after Leo died, at some point I was, I am the kind of person who I never know what I want to do, but I know what I do not want to do. So I always know very strongly what I don't like, what's not for me. But it's very difficult for me to choose what to do. I am grateful to Leo for 2 big things. One is that he trusted me, and he left me with things that gave me some kind of authority, being entrusted with his collection. And funny enough, I've donated part of the collection, but I kind of really never sold anything. I think I still have a lot of things that I don't know even why I have them.
But he left you something else. He left you, and you've kept them, the artist.
Well, that is the thing. He gave me a chance to speak to them. And then the question becomes, for me, how do I not ruin this? You know what I'm saying? Because, it might... Eventually, the relation with Jasper Johns or the relation with Dorothy Lichtenstein, or Roy Lichtenstein, but Roy passed away before Leo, but the relation with Dorothy, or the relation with artists like Robert Morris or, Kissonier, they really had to become my relation. So he gave me a chance, but then they had to become mine to survive. And that is really, I think, the problem of the legacy. And then the other issue is, once you have a gallery like Castelli that is such a big name in art history, you kind of feel that you either keep those names or you close and you open your own gallery, basically. You can't just start showing random things. So without the relation with those people, the gallery wouldn't have a meaning anymore. Again, I'm grateful to Leo, but I'm also grateful to the artists that listened to me and they gave me a chance. That's what I'm saying.
And they're still giving you a chance.
Well, we do work with most of them. And at times when we don't work with an artist, it might be more my choice than their choice. And what I'm saying by my choice is that, I'm going to take the example of Jasper Johns because it's so important. I do still work very much with Jasper, and I'm grateful that he takes my call all the time. And occasionally he calls me too. But the point is, you are a young person. You are, a foreigner. You are learning. And, even the person whom I say, my dealer of 45 years entrusted everything to her so I can trust her, then you wonder, do I have the experience to do things well? Because what if I mess up everything?
But do you think today's art stars, they've raised so differently? They're like free agents in sports. Like they go from Paris Saint-Germain to Real Madrid because they're getting $300 million here. And then Messi goes to Miami and things like that. Do you feel like artists now being raised in a different time, they have a different sense of, you could say on the one hand, loyalty, on the other hand, just a different view of business in their career now?
I don't know. And I tell you one thing, actually, Leo told me several times, it was easier to see the importance of Jasper Johns' art than keeping Jasper Johns at the gallery for so long, So this idea of the tempting artists to move always existed. I think I would consider only two things that I believe have a meaning. First of all, I think that no matter what, artists have something that I don't have, and is that they are artists and they all are very needy at the end of the day. And I feel a big difference is the Castelli artists that Leo showed were kids during the Depression, and something affected them in a way such that really never went away from them. And so you would see artists who could be the wealthiest people ever, but they would buy a ticket economy class, and not because they were stingy, just because they grew up in a certain way and that didn't get out of them. I think that sometimes the artists do that today. First of all, there might be a minority, but I also think at the end of the day, an artist is an artist and they all want you to look at their work, speak to them. I just feel that no matter what, even more than the show at MoM or one thing or another, I think they want somebody who looks at what they do and who listen to them or ask questions, but they don't want to be asked questions that are stupid. Don't mean to criticize anybody. I'm just saying that to really engage in that conversation, often you need to have a lot of experience of the art in first person, not in just reading books or things of this kind.
And you were talking about legacy before. They're the ones with the opportunity for a real legacy that goes centuries rather than decades and things like that. It's like their work, you talked about Jasper's, 200 years from now, people will be looking and talking about Jasper. They won't be thinking about, the Baer fax was great. And they may not even be knowing who Leo Castelli was, but they'll know Jasper Johns.
I think that in 200 years from now, they will look at the 60 and they will make just a chapter in the history book where now we have in pop art, the minimal, conceptual. It will all just be one chapter. But in that one chapter, Jasper will be there, yes. I think.
Well, let me talk about two other artists that you work with in different ways. There's a great work of art coming up for sale next week by Marcel Duchamp. And it comes from Joseph Kosuth. And I remember being at Joseph's house all 40, 50, 80 years ago, whenever Joseph invented conceptual art, which is, I think, he said in 1912 he invented it. Lawrence Weiner was 1913. But talk as a historian, many of us think, wow, that's an exceptional thing. And then others of us go, oh man, we love it, it's not going to sell. So have you thought about Joseph in relationship to Duchamp and in the marketplace, whether that has resonance?
I think there was that time in the 60s, that was, I guess, the time of avant-garde, a certain avant-garde at least, where ideas were very important. And who did the what first was something to fight about, and you could just call
Believe
to
me,
artists.
I was a kid here, they were fighting about that all the time.
That's what I'm saying, and they could just kill each other over that, you know. And I think the new generation doesn't really understand what that meant in a way, because it is lost a little bit. I don't think people look anymore so much at who did the what.
But this was Joseph's trophy.
First, yes.
For like his identity, I always thought of like success, that he could have this, and then he could live with it and what it meant.
You see, I feel this is the art historian of me coming on the scene. Okay, let's suppose I have to sell an Andy Warhol painting. And let's suppose Andy Warhol is here with us and is alive, and he says, oh, this painting is one of my favorite ever. Okay, everybody will buy just because the artist said that. Okay? Now let's suppose I have to sell a Joseph Kossuth, but even more difficult, a felt of Robert Morris, you know, that basically is something you buy for $20, and now I'm there and I have to explain to you why you have to pay $500,000. It's not easy, right? I guess that is where the art historian come in. I believe that when Duchamp did that work, and when Joseph Kossuth did his work at the beginning as well, there was also a certain comment about our society and about the idea that art could be a commodity. And today, Joseph is very happy to sell his work and have money. And he was always happy to sell his work and have money. However, the statement was, my art is against the idea that you buy and sell it and you make money with it. Because in today's society, I don't agree with art being a commodity. Which, by the way, makes our job even more difficult, but that doesn't matter. But the value of the art is partially also in this element. And in a certain way, I guess conceptual art came out after the commercial success of pop art, because as Jasper said to me many times, and how, you know, the Foundation for Contemporary Art that he found has been trying to say, you know, the pop artists are the first, or Jasper might not even be a pop artist, it doesn't matter, but they are the first generation of artists in America who lived selling their own work. Until then, nobody was living out of selling their work. All in a sudden, you have Leo Castelli, Liana Sonnabend, and this new group of artists who for the first time can sell their work, can pay their bill, and can just paint happily. And all in a sudden, there is the perception, which I think is completely wrong, but it's okay, the perception that art is becoming a business and just a commodity and doesn't have any meaning anymore with what is going on. It's kind of not true. I mean, I guess the most classic example is actually Andy Warhol, who, after all, he painted Marilyn after she died, you know, but people didn't see that. People just saw the pretty color and easy to please and something. And so I think that
with Andy, I think back to this story, and this is what I learned as a kid, so maybe it's a myth. But at one point, Andy didn't know what to paint. So somebody said to him, paint your favorite thing.
That's interesting.
He painted money. That's the story that I remember from 50 or 60 years ago. And I think it's probably a true story.
Well, it goes with what I'm saying
Yes.
in a certain way.
Yes.
But I mean, I just think that eventually, again, when you get to conceptual art, there is a little bit this idea, we are against art. Art is serious. You know what I'm saying?
But as a historian, I'm sure you came to looking at Jasper's work. People should know that Duchamp is a big influence there. And it's not obvious to people maybe today.
You see this, and obviously the full idea that a flag is an object in the same way as a ready-made is an object, with the only difference that there is abex in between. So Jasper painted it instead taking a flag. Definitively, you know, it's the influence of Duchamp with the brushstroke of abex, I guess. But even false start, you know, with the name of colors. obviously there is a big influence of Duchamp, but then you go back into another conversation that is interesting, that is, what relation does the market have with the art as what, the importance of the art? Because if we look at the importance of Duchamp, maybe the shovel could be 20 million, but it is 2 to 3, which is still a lot of money. But and often, even in many other artists, even within Jasper work, maybe what the market value is very important, but other things that are even more important are not valued by the market. So there is always...
Yes, most expensive is not always the most important, but it could be.
Yes, it could be. And I think when you think about... You see the question also moving to the next generation. First of all, if I think about Leo, I am thinking, would Leo be happy or not? Because there is also a side of Leo that I think felt that he was the special Leo. He was the one who really had created all of this world. I think he would be very happy that I speak about him all the time, that I'm not speaking a lot about me, number one. But then number two is like, how can you use that name and keep it alive?
You're listening to the Baer Faxed podcast. Stay tuned for part 3 of our episode, where Baer and Castelli dive deep into how the gallery model has changed in the 2020s, the reevaluation of the Western art canon, and the finicky nature of taste when it comes to collecting art. All this and more right after this message.
Arthur Analytics is the only application you need to master the art of collecting. Let's say, like me, you're headed to Art Basel Miami Beach next week. Say hi to us, by the way. But you're overwhelmed by the amount of galleries that'll be on display. With its simple and intuitive interface, Arthur puts the latest news, sales, and data on trending artists and galleries at your fingertips, enabling you to walk the fair like you run the fair. It's never been easier and faster to access the data collectors and buyers like us need. So for more information, head to arthuranalytics.com/Baerfax. But then the question really gets to, and we were talking before about Jeff Poe's podcast, which thank you for listening to, is like how or what is the model or how do galleries need to exist? It's now late 2024. You've had 25 years at the helm there. What is sort of your view of like where we are as a business and the expenses and the where you have to be and all that stuff and the versus, what makes sense and where we're going? Sort of a vague question, I know, but.
Well, I think that number one, Jeff is completely right about the secret of the success is partially also keeping your expenses controlled, not to go crazy. There is a paradox for me here, and I actually have been trying to solve it in my head, and I don't really know if I'm able to. There are times in which I think we really live in the world, everybody's famous for 15 minutes, and I kind of feel like I don't like to go to Switzerland in June, because it's a very nice month to be on the beach.
It's nice in my wife being Swiss. It's nice in the mountains in June. So if you can do Basel and then go to the mountains, that's okay.
Maybe, but there is this part of me that says, because there are so many fairs and because there are so many galleries, does really anybody notice if Castelli Gallery is doing Basel? Or do I notice, but beside me, does anybody else notice? And then you think about what are the artists expecting? And I don't know if some young artists expect you to go to Basel because they are young and it's exciting. I think the people I work with at this point, they would tell me, do what you want. It's really up to you. And the truth is that we always sell things without art fairs. Most of the time when I do an art fair...
So why are you doing the art fairs?
Well, we do very little, and most of the time they don't make any sense, as a matter of fact, because they become things like, oh, I really miss Japan, I want to go to Asia, so let's go to Seoul. And they don't make any sense from a business decision. There is also that little irrational element that eventually function because it shows that you have an enthusiasm, and it's better to do things with enthusiasm than do them because everybody's do them and you need to do what everyone is doing.
But let's be honest, you're able to make those decisions in a sort of intuitive way. If you're living sort of paycheck to paycheck as a gallery, or art fair to art fair, or show to show, it's a different question, right?
At the end of the day, yes. And the point is also, anytime we do art fair, there are, in terms of sales, there are two outcomes. One, we sell everything to people we know before the fair. Or two, we sell to new people who then we don't meet anymore. So this is our experience, at least. So the fairs in themselves, for my business, has become more of a kind of an advertisement for the gallery, just for people to know we exist and we do things. But there are other galleries that function in another way. There are other galleries that live only out of doing the fair. So it all depends eventually on the artist you work with and what you show. For example, in the Basel group, there is a little bit the pressure of having to show prime quality things. And because there is this idea that that is the most important fair, and so you need to have all A+ work. And then you stop and you think, what is an A+ work, basically? And okay, I can say that the Jones painting at the Met is A+ work, but so what? So many other things are so relative. And especially in the global world we live in, it's really difficult to decide what is A+.
Well, it reminds me, the other night I was on a panel and there were three other very astute, qualified, well-known art advisors. And the question came up about the market and taste. So the three of them spent 10 or 15 minutes talking about education of their clients and history from the 1500s and all these things. They're all true. And then maybe because I'm a clown, I look at the audience and I say, okay, raise your hand if you have bad taste, because everybody thinks they have good taste all the time. So everybody thinks they know that painting the Met, that's the best one. But it's a sense of like, it's not exactly true. No one in the world ever says, yeah, my taste sucks.
There is that, but there is also another thing that I believe people should have a little bit more humility, buyer, dealer, everybody.
Why are you looking at me so closely? I see that stare. It's like, uh-oh, maybe I have to moderate my thoughts.
No. So what I was thinking is really the following, basically. Take today society in which not only in the artwork, but everything has been expanding in a way such that basically the Museum of Modern Art has decided they don't want to be only a museum of white American men. They are buying Asian, South America. They are learning how to really open to everything. And it's not that the mama was wrong before. It is just, it was a different time. Okay?
Well, we have a fundamental question there. It's like, what does modern art mean now versus when they were created? So that's a fundamental question on top of that they have to answer for themselves too.
The art historian me will also tell you that in Italy, modern art started with the French Revolution, and in Japan it started in 1868. So everything is relative. That's what I'm saying.
A curator friend of mine was in the Middle East. I've told this story before, and they were talking to one of the owners of one of the Emirates, so to speak. And she said something about post-war art. And the sheikh looked at her and said, which war are you talking about? And it's like, we need to change our vocabulary as well. So the historian in you is thinking about that.
Well, that is the point. And then the other thing is the following. Like when I was a young student in college, you study Japanese art, and you get this book, and there is 5 chapters about Japanese painting. And then you look at the art, and they're not paintings. Because basically, things written by European 50 years ago thought that, everything that you paint on some surface is a painting, I don't know. they basically took the idea of what painting is in Europe and they applied it universally on the planet. And then you go to Japan and you read and you don't understand anything of what the Japanese people did, because what we call painting and we wrote about in a certain way is actually something made on a piece of paper that's supposed to hang when the moon is full and put away when there is no moon. You know what I'm saying? and you realize that basically there is so much to change, and that goes also with the issue of the taste or what is good.
You were in Japan early within all this, and I've been going, I was in Japan before that, but a little bit, going more and more to Asia, I'm realizing, wait a second, we've assumed that Agnes Martin, let's just take her, because it's abstract and it's not a picture of something that specific, means the same thing in New York as in Beijing, as in Saudi Arabia, as in Paris. And that's one of the best lessons I've got is, wait a second, we have to adjust our thinking to, like what you were saying, what is even a painting and how is it used? And that it's just not this Western.
Well, that is basically, I think it's the first time that it is all coming into conversation. And I think that as Western people are left really lost because if you want to understand what is that type of art that they do in Japan or whatever they might have done in India, you really need to go to Japan and spend 3 years there learning Japanese and read the book they've wrote and speak with the people. Otherwise, you cannot understand anything.
That's why for me, it's like, I don't feel I can be expert in that because they have a cultural history, some of them, and some of the art in that way. And yes, you'd need a long time to understand that.
And so when it comes to basically having a certain taste or understand something, I was talking to somebody who wants to collect art and they were asking about what I thought about one artist and another. And, I'm just thinking, if you need to renovate your kitchen and you need a contractor, you basically have to speak with a lot of people because you wouldn't know who is good. You don't know who can fix the pipe well or not. And if you need to go to see a doctor, it doesn't mean that the doctor who charges the most money is the best. And I don't know why we have this assumption that somebody out of some taste needs to know what is good art. I don't know what to say. And bad art is also okay sometimes, meaning if somebody needs to do art, they do art and that is it. But it's very peculiar that we have this idea that people basically make a research to find out who do they need to hire to treat their heart, but they think they go by taste.
People spend more time researching a refrigerator to buy than a painting to buy. It's
That's
true.
That's what I'm saying.
It's like you wouldn't buy a refrigerator. They wouldn't. It's whatever billionaire or, starving student. Then they like, oh, I like that. $800. Okay. But you put them with the Frigidaire and it's like, oh, well, what's the blah, blah, blah rating on that? It's like, WTF.
This is really what I mean to say. And this is why I think I don't understand why people cannot just simply say, I really don't know much. And it's a funny thing. There are people sometimes come to the gallery and if they want to buy something, I speak to them and then they say, can you please write it all down? Oh. But they get very surprised because very likely I say things that for the first time make them feel that it's not a matter of I should know, or it's not a matter of this is the price because at auction that's sold for that price. You know what I'm saying? But I think, I really think that is where my art historian person comes in
but
a
as
way.
A dealer who's a collector, they're thinking completely differently, or that was a collector.
Yes. I think the dealers who are collector have a different appreciation. And then at the point, I like to collect art too. And people tell me, what do you collect? And I say, no, don't go there because
you can tell us. We'll keep the secret.
It's just that I like the stuff that nobody buys. So I was always say, don't buy what I buy because I thought
that was me. Okay, there's more than one of us.
Well, that's the thing. I buy the things nobody buys. I actually feel that the so-called masterpieces should not be in people's house and they can be museum. But
I mean, if you look over there, there's this great Chris Burton sculpture on my table.
oh, yes.
And it's a famous piece from the early 80s or something. And I bought it recently because it didn't sell at Christie's. No one wanted it. And like, okay, I bought it. Now, I paid pennies on the dollar for it, but I love it.
Well, that's a little bit how I am, but I really like the stuff nobody likes. And I like it very much when there are things that you kind of get the feeling that the artist doesn't have a clue what he's doing.
But their favorite work is often not their best work.
Well, let me tell you this. When Jasper Johns had the Grey show at the Met, I went to watch the show together with Robert Morris. And so we were walking together through the room, and there are two gray flags. And I said to Bob, I don't really know why, but I don't like this painting, but I like this. And you know what Bob said? He said, well, look at the painting you like. He didn't know what he was doing, and you have a feeling he was searching for an image, and that you already knew it all, so he was just repeating it. And I wouldn't have been able to elaborate this, but it was so interesting to have the comment of an other artist.
The artist who understood the other artist's work better than those artists understood it themselves.
Yes, that's what I very like, but...
that's for me my drawback about Robert Morris. So what you really like about him is what holds me back, but that's another.
I had to say, like in the case of Robert Morris, but not only in the case of Robert Morris, I kind of feel that there are so many things, which is why I love the job at the gallery at the end of the day. There are so many things that I end up appreciating because I had this possibility of asking endless questions. And that's what I'm saying also when I say that the artist want you to be interested in the work, even more than you organizing a show at MoMA because you know somebody who buys a work and then speak with a curator and all of this politics. Often this idea, they don't like it when there is another journalist asking the same question again and again. But when you move to the next level and all in a sudden I remember also with Bob, something crazy that happened one day. So in the 60s, he was doing these weird little drawings with magnetic objects that were moving the graphite. And then out of the blue, I'm in Japan and I find this book in which there are images of drawing that are the same drawing that Bob was doing. The small details is that they were done by a surrealist artist in France, but there are no books in the Western world that I ever found. I just found the image published in a book in Japan in the 30s. and somehow then it opened all my mind about the connection with surrealism and the influence. And being able to then speak about these things with the artist is kind of priceless if you are interested. Now, does that also help selling a felt? At the end of the day, yes. But it helps because you have that passion about the work. It doesn't help because you can convince somebody to pay $500,000 for something they can buy at $200 and cut on their own.
Well, I think that's a good spot to sort of end on because, it talks about that passion and hopefully you found this sometimes sort of journalist, we were able to go a little deeper. That was the intention than a normal interview and podcast. And I hope our readers and our listeners understand that. And hopefully you feel that you were able to go that way a little bit too.
I did. And I'm so happy you invited me. I actually wonder why is Josh even calling me.
So now you know. So you weren't even sure we could release this. I think we can, Barbara.
Okay. Thank you. But congratulations on this because I actually really enjoyed Jeff, but I also enjoy Murakami talking and I enjoy your question about Japan and his answering about Japan. I enjoy all of the podcasts I listen to, so congratulations.
Thank you to Barbara Castelli for coming on the show. Thank you to Arthur Analytics for sponsoring this episode of the Baer Facts podcast. By the way, look out for someone wearing a I Love the Baer Facts podcast hat. They probably work for the Baer Facts down in Miami Beach. Arthur's app is available on the web or on your mobile device. It features data and insights that keep the art world moving in one easy-to-use application, and they are changing the game for art collectors around the world. So try it out for yourself. It's free now, no commitment required. Once again at arthuranalytics.com/BaerFacts.
Thanks for listening to the Baer Facts podcast. Today's episode is hosted by Josh Baer. Our executive producer is Luyang Zhang. Our content strategist is Boliang Shen. And I'm Patrick Hill, associate editor. Our audio editor for this episode is Auntie Lane. Check back soon for future episodes as we unpack the inner workings of the global art industry through exclusive, candid interviews with key players in the business, as they offer their perspectives on art and the market in the US, Asia, Europe, and beyond.